today on My First Concert, has there been a most memorable concert that you performed?
I would say that was a big one, the big hometown First Ave show. And then there was a moment where I was 15 years old and I was on stage in Chicago and I got out of school early to go play this gig with my dad and I flew to Chicago. And then I was on the stage and then I realized I looked to my left and Greg Hawkes from the Cars is playing keys. And then Todd Rundgren's up there. And I was like, it kind of dawned on me halfway through the show, sound check. We were hanging with those guys all day. And then halfway through the show, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And just that moment of it truly not registering until I was halfway through the set that was probably one of my most memorable moments.
Great to have you along, everybody. Dave Lee here with Davide on My First Concert. Davide, good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a little while as you've been out at the tech show out in California. You're learning all the new electronic devices out there. I hope that was a good trip.
It was wonderful weather, and we had a very successful podcast series that we did there with Paul. And yeah, it was fantastic. So, I'm glad to be back now too.
Well, good. I hope they had a big sale on those Neumann microphones. So you brought a couple back of those for me at a bargain price.
Yeah. I might be able to hook you up with some Electro Voice microphones, but not Neumann.
Well, that'd be good too. Well, we're pretty excited here. Thanks to our friends over at Connecticut here at the Corsi and Aquarius from the AquariusHomeServices.com studio. Jeff and the gang over there who are a great sponsor, good friends, as a matter of fact. And they're bringing this to you along with our friends at StarBank.net, our bank right here at Talk North, by the way. And we're very thrilled today to have Isaac Levy with us. Isaac is a great musician. Some of you may know his father as well. Davide, you've had a chance to work with this guy before recording and mixing, but he's nice enough to join us on the show. Isaac, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Thanks for having me, Davide.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you're here. So
let's talk about that very first concert that you went to. Do you remember what it was, who it was, where it was?
I sure do. It was probably the most memorable one for a 3-year-old. It was Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at XL Energy Center. 3 or 4 years old, somewhere in there. It was a birthday present from my mom. My dad, as you mentioned, is a touring drummer, and he was out on the road, and my mom wanted to do something special for my birthday. So she bought me tickets to that, and I just remember being a little kid on her shoulders, and my mind was blown.
Oh, yeah. Wow. I mean, at 3 years old. It's funny, Isaac, because in the midst of asking folks about their first concert, oftentimes, I would say so far, the majority of times, it was with their parents, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So did you attend many you were making music as a young kid. Did you attend many concerts beside that one?
I did. As my dad being a musician, whenever I had the chance, I would follow him to any show he was playing. I would sit on the side of the stage, go sit out at the front of house mixing console. I just wanted to absorb as much as I could. So I would say, quite honestly, I probably attended one of my dad's shows before then, but that was my first concert where I had tickets and everything. It was truly memorable experience. But yes, I've always wanted to go to shows ever since I was a little kid and just be around it and absorb it.
Were those a lot of the Brian Setzer shows?
Yeah, a lot of Brian Setzer. My dad was playing with Peter Frampton for a little bit too.
Oh, that's right. And,
yeah. Then with the Honey Dogs and Five for Fighting as well. But I would say I probably attended more Brian Setzer shows than anything else.
Isaac, at 3 years old, it's hard to top Bruce Springsteen, but the first concert you performed in, what was that?
It must have been somewhere, I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old with the Honey Dogs, with my dad and uncle. That's their band. And I think I sat in on guitar at the Cedar Cultural Center.
Wow.
And ever since that day, that was the start of it all for me. I kind of knew I didn't want to do anything else after that.
So at 6 or 7, were you playing relatively well at that age?
Yeah, I would say so. My dad, actually, John Fields, who's across the hall, my dad got me a red Fender Stratocaster when I was 5 years old. Of course, like a 3/4 size one, a little bit shorter scale. And John Fields was there for my 5th birthday. And week after that, he enrolled me in guitar lessons with John Eller over at Willie's American Guitars. And I would say for the next 2 years until I was about 7, whenever I'd get home from school, the school bus would drop me off and I would just play guitar, not do my homework, and then build those calluses up.
So your first instrument is guitar, huh?
First, yeah, I would say I probably played drums a little bit before, but guitar always clicked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dad was a drummer. Yeah. Dad is a drummer, but you play multiple instruments, right?
Yeah, guitar, bass, piano, and drums.
These multi-instrumentalists are very dangerous because they half of the instruments that they actually play, they don't mention it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But
too kind.
So Isaac, if you start a band, what instrument would you play?
Guitar feels like home to me. I would say guitar. Then bass probably equally, and drums probably equally as well. Piano was probably the least of my strong suit, but I felt like I don't know. I felt like guitar is just my instrument, if that makes sense.
Let's go back to that Stratocaster. So since that time, what are you playing now? What's your guitar of choice?
Well, I'm very fortunate. By the time I was 17 years old, I got an endorsement with Fender, and they were kind enough to send me a bunch of guitars. But the first real guitar I ever bought myself, saved up a bunch of money. My dad loaned me $100 and I paid him back over the course of a summer, but bought a American Fender Telecaster at Willie's when I was 13. And I think it's just having that be my first real American made guitar that kind of just left a big, probably like an imprint on my guitar taste. And I've been playing basically mainly Telecasters every day since.
Do you still have that original American Fender Telecaster?
I sure do. A few modifications have been done to it. It got a little bit too beat up over time, and there's been some serious road wear on it. But yes, I still do.
How about that? How about that 3/4 sized one that you got?
Oh man, that's in pieces in some bin somewhere. I had a phase probably a little bit down the line at 8 or 9 years old where I was trying to build guitars and I was trying to solder pickups and put new necks on stuff. But of course, I was never trained to do that, so I ruined a few things, including that little 3/4.
Oh, well, it's just the whole idea of doing that too.
Exactly.
But you've had a chance to play with a number of people, including, I believe, Todd Rundgren, haven't you?
Yes, I've sat in with Todd a few times. Then I've his wife Michelle is a very good friend of mine, so I've been to their house doing some engineering work for them. Yeah, they're just great, phenomenal people.
Well, and he was one of the early adopters. I remember talking with him one time for about an hour or so. And his interest was not so much even in the music world at that time. It was all about mixing and engineering and things that you could do from the studios. Is he still that way?
He still is. Yeah, it's truly remarkable. I would say he was a pioneer as far as mixing, engineering, and recording. And nowadays, it's very common for artists to do their own work on their own. And Todd kind of was one of the guys to start that. Even back in the early 70s, he was mixing, recording, producing all of his own songs that he was writing. So he was definitely he was his own man show. But yes, he's still doing that to this day. It truly blows my mind. He's always writing and always collaborating with other artists and producers.
How did they find out about your talents?
Long, convoluted story, but a guy in town, Rick Meyer, and his wife Amy moved to Hawaii or bought a place there, and they met Todd and Michelle, and then somewhere along the line they needed an engineer, so they just referred me, and I was out there.
Wow.
Yeah, you had to go to Hawaii and work too. That would be
it's just horrible being in a tropical paradise.
Yeah, bang the drum all day. That's
exactly.
That song would be a good theme when you're on the islands, I would think. We're talking with Isaac Levy, who's with us here, a talented musician in the Twin Cities, another one of the up-and-comers in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We talk about the sound, as we have on this show for, a lot of episodes, but we've had a chance to talk to a number of the new generation out there and know that the music scene in this town is in pretty good hands with guys like Isaac and many others. And we'll talk some more in a minute. I do want to say thank you, though, to Jeff and the staff over at Aquarius Home Services, who are really, really good people. And I know that you've got a shrinking schedule. You're so busy. We stress over our household repairs. We don't get a chance sometimes to enjoy life because we're worried about those. But you're not alone in that department, folks. And Aquarius Home Services has your back because they're trusted, they're local, they're the let us tackle your to-do list team. I can just tell you from experience, having known Jeff, since he started the company over 2 decades ago, how they are into making sure that you're satisfied, that you're first. I think one of the first times they ever came to the house, and I've used them ever since with multiple things from water to furnaces to whether it be air conditioning, whatever, but electrical now too. But the first time they came, they asked, hey, is it okay if I park the van right there? I said, nobody's ever asked me that before. I mean, it's a kind of a small town feel here in the metro, and they're really good. They're dedicated. And right now they're slashing $98 from the price. You choose the service, they'll fix and take $98 off the repair cost for furnace, plumbing, electrical repair. It's a good time to get a hold of them. Anytime's a good time, but especially now you can save some money. But I know that they believe in earning the right to be recommended. And man, I can recommend it without a problem at all after all these years. They're just a click away. Jeff and I have stayed friends for that whole time. They're just good people, and you're going to find out when you get a hold of them at AquariusHomeservices.com. Isaac Levy is with us. He is a great musician here in the Twin Cities. And Isaac, gosh, you played with a lot of people. You can perform on your own. You're doing a lot of mixing and engineering right now. What about your performing schedule? What do you got on tap? What's coming up?
Yeah, this year I'm kind of taking more time to be in the studio rather than shows. But as far as my 2023 last year went, I was barely in Minnesota. I did 3, if not 4, cross-country tours. Out of the country as well. But this year I'm just kind of taking it easy and just focusing on being in the studio, mixing, producing, and playing guitar and bass for other artists. And that's it's truly been a great experience, and that's what I really love to do, is being in the studio and working on other.
What would you tell us as fans and fans of yours? What is it like when you're touring the country, or for that matter, as you mentioned, even internationally?
I would say it looks like a very, very glamorous life, and it is the dream job. But I will say it's definitely a lot more work than what it seems like. You truly don't realize how exhausting traveling can be, especially when you're doing it every day for 2+ months. I remember being a kid, being 5 years old, and seeing my dad, go on tours and fly around the country, and it's like, oh, that's the coolest thing. It's like not even a real job. It's like a cool job. It's like a fake job.
Yeah.
And then 10+ years down the road, it's my job. And then it's the strangest phenomenon where when I'm on tour and you're, waking up at 5 a.m. to catch a flight and then go somewhere else, then play a show that day and go back to the hotel, do it over and over again. It truly feels like Groundhog Day, and you just want to be home. But when I'm home, I feel like I want to be back out on the road and be doing that.
Yeah, I imagine there's a rush when you first see the crowd, they get into the music.
Oh, yes. It's the adrenaline is truly unmatched. You can't really describe it, but it's a great, great feeling. Most notably, I just played a show at First Ave, and it was kind of like a big hometown show for a band I've been touring with called Yam House, and those guys are definitely local favorites here. So it was cool. The big screen, the projector screen came up when we were headlining it, and just the sheer volume of the crowd. Stuff like that, the adrenaline is just, it's truly amazing.
Well, First Avenue is legendary. What is it like to play First Avenue? I mean, it's got to be kind of obviously a notch on the belt, an item that you don't forget. But as a performer, what's it like first time when you go to First Ave?
I've been fortunate enough now to play at the First Ave main room a few times, and every time it is truly not lost on me how cool it is and the cultural and historical significance of First Ave. There's a kind of indescribable, but there's a feeling where you're on that stage. I don't know if it's the adrenaline but it's magical. It just kind of makes you feel alive. And other people have said that too who have played there. But I would say it is really easy every day to play fun in big rooms like that. You definitely take it for granted. it just goes by so quick. But the first half stage, whenever I'm on that stage, it's always important just to take a step back and truly realize where you are.
Has there been a most memorable concert that you performed?
I would say that was a big one, the big hometown first Ave show. And then there was a moment where I was 15 years old, and I was on stage in Chicago, and I got out of school early to go play this gig with my dad, and I flew to Chicago. And then I was on the stage, and then I realized I looked to my left, and Greg Hawkes from the Cars is playing keys, and then Todd Rundgren's up there. And I was like, it kind of dawned on me halfway through the show, sound check. We were hanging with those guys all day. And then halfway through the show, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And just that moment of it truly not registering until I was halfway through the set that was probably one of my most memorable moments.
What about, you're talking about the rooms. Would you rather play a room like First Ave, or would you like to play a big concert hall? Does it matter to you when you're the band or when you're performing what the venue is?
Yeah, it's funny. Just this last year, I played everything from 100-seat clubs all the way to baseball stadiums. And I truly had the most fun in somewhere in the middle around probably like the 1,200 to 1,500 seat rooms, like First Ave or the House of Blues. We played Target Field here last year, warming up for the Killers, and that was a lot of fun, except it's with that big of a space, it truly doesn't feel like there's a crowd for some reason. You're so far away from everybody. There's festival barriers as far as 20 feet away from you, if not more. Whereas First Ave, the crowd is right there, the barrier is right in front of you, and you can truly see everybody. Whereas a big room or a big stadium, it almost doesn't feel real in a weird way.
You feel vulnerable.
Yeah, it's like there's so many people here and they're so far away from me that it doesn't even feel real. It's really weird.
When you play that as a band member, a baseball stadium like that, or a stadium wherever it may be, sound-wise for you as a musician, with technology, are you able to still get the same sound you would in a 1,500, 2,000 seat arena, or is it a little different in your ears, what you're hearing?
Yeah. Luckily, every band I've toured with in this last year, everybody's on in-ear monitors, so everybody gets their own mix. We can all choose what we want to hear. And in my point of view, it's even in a big, spacious environment like that, my ears are always clean and I always hear the same thing night after night. But as far as a crowd perspective goes, it's definitely a challenge. When the Killers were playing, I was able to go out front at Target Field, and it's a space that big. It's just so boomy. But yes, my point of view on stage never necessarily gets changed of what I'm hearing.
How about playing with Corey Wong? Yeah,
I've done a few things with Corey, kind of right when he was starting with Wolfpack. I was a massive fan of Corey, being a young guitar player and seeing him get all the cool session man work. Then I've done a few things, just kind of engineering work for Corey as well, a few little studio things. But Corey's a phenomenal musician, and all of us are really impressed. And it shows you how Corey's a great testament of working hard and taking the world by storm, showing you that a lot of great things come out of Minneapolis, I should say.
I think we all are proud of Corey Wong, and especially, he has spent a lot of time in these studios, and we just saw him at NAMM in LA, because he's also sponsored by Electro Voice, and so he was there one day to do his autograph hour, and the lines were huge but really long. But he went through. He went like an hour and a half through all the people that stood in line to get his autograph. And we're very proud of him.
Yes. Yeah, we're very proud of him. And especially my generation of folks and kids my age, it's really cool to see how he's cultivated his Instagram community and his social media community. And there's people all over the world who are truly fans of him. And it's really cool to see when he does those meet and greets.
Yep.
How many people he's truly cultivated into his following. It's really, really cool and very well deserved.
Well, speaking of social media now, as a performer, whether you like it or not, you have to obviously have a presence there. So let's
Yes.
talk about your presence on social media. I mean, does someone help you, or are you tackling that yourself?
I've been tackling that myself. I would say for my case, it's a little bit easier because I'm not necessarily an artist. I'm a guy who works for artists, but definitely for the artists I work with, it can be a challenge to, constantly post, constantly have your followers be aware of what you're doing and to almost still seem relevant. But yes, for me, I'm kind of lucky because basically if I'm posting on Instagram, it's to show people that I'm working and almost to build a digital resume, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Whereas the artist sense, it's mostly, I have a new song coming out and I need to promote this. Whereas my career doesn't necessarily depend on Instagram, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Do you see yourself evolving though? Do you want to achieve that artist spot, or I know you like what you're doing right now, but do you see there any?
I've thought about it. I truly love working with other people and being the guy who brings artist songs across the finish line. Whether that's live or in the studio, I just love working for other people and working with other people, I should say.
So on the session work now, and which you do a ton of, and all these things, are you performing pretty much? I know the guitar is your first love. I've seen you play the bass, obviously, as well, and quite well. But on the sessions, are you doing whatever instrument they ask, or are you trying to just stick to the guitar?
Yeah, from sessions, I'll do as little as only play guitar or bass or drums or anything like that. And then I would say a majority of my work is playing all of the instruments, mixing, producing, and getting the song across the finish line. So basically just being a one-man band for an artist is a big part of my work.
We're talking with Isaac Levy. He is a local musician, a very talented one, as you've heard, been out playing with all sorts of people. Of course, his father, the drummer for Brian Setzer Orchestra, Peter Frampton, a lot of other people. And of course, Isaac playing with Todd Rundgren and Corey Wong and many others, and in high demand here in the Metro. This is My First Concert, Dave, here along with Davide, our producer. You can download these wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Spotify or Apple, or go to talknorth.com. We have a ton of great podcasts there. And I want to thank, by the way, our bank at talknorth.com is Star Bank. And it's nice to know that we're telling you about a great bank because it's the one we use right here. The turnaround times on loans, by the way, with Star Bank it's pretty quick. Once you apply and submit your documentation, they move it right along. And I think that stems from their days as a small town bank. That's how they started. That same family owns them. They have 10 here in Minnesota now, including right here in the Twin Cities. And so they'll handle anything in the business banking world, in the personal banking world. If it's the digital banking you like to do, I think all of us do as much as we're moving around and stuff. And that's easy. And they have all of that. But they are also very, very fun to walk into and meet, and they'll get to know you right away. You'll get to know them. It's still that small town feel, even here in the Metro, in the big city. So learn about them. Learn things they're doing. Maybe it's ag operating, equipment loans. Maybe it's a house, a camper, an RV, a series of new Fender Stratocasters, whatever it is. I'd encourage you to get your loan needs met at Star Bank, family-owned, good people, as I mentioned, the same family. So call them, stop by. They'll answer the phone, by the way. You're not going to go to voicemail. They'll answer the phone. Somebody will. Call your local branch today. Stop in at your convenience. They're great supporters of all the hometowns they're in. Loans are subject to a loan application approval. Starbank.net, member FDIC, and equal housing lender. Davide, I just want to make sure that you mentioned so folks understand Isaac's influence here in the Twin Cities and how much in demand he is, because you are a music producer. You are in this world. You know so many people involved in it. And I know long before Isaac stopped in what a huge fan you were of Isaac's and many other in the music business.
Yeah, I mean, we had David last week on the podcast. Remember how I told you,
David Feely, yeah.
When I need a Swiss Army knife as a guitar player, I call David. And for Isaac, if I need an eclectic bass player that brings flavor into the production, that's when I call him. And we had a few opportunities to work together, and it's just something that what is getting lost is musicians, session musicians, when they come into a session, the expectations of a producer is to not just make them look good, but like bring ideas, bring flavor into the project. I want somebody that is in it, that is passionate about the project, that not just comes in and plays whatever, like, okay, there's a B and an A, and that's the whole progression here, and that's what I'm playing, but that actually comes up with pretty cool ideas into the songs to make the songs better, and the artist is going to be happy too. And that's why. And the other thing that I was saying that gets lost is that some musicians are not able to play through anymore. Like they need to like swallow the song before actually playing it. And with people like David or Isaac, they come prepared. They hear the songs, they chart out whatever they need to chart out, or they memorize things, and they also come weaponed with ideas. And to me is when we start the first take on a song, that's just the most fun, because that's when it's like what's happening is the most important one, because all the ideas are coming out on that first take, and then we evolve it from there.
Yeah.
So
he's a guy that you want, one of those musicians.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really, I guess, David, a musician's musician, which I don't think can be a higher compliment. Hey, Isaac, what about songwriting though?
Yeah, I do a fair amount of songwriting. I would say most of my work on songwriting is being almost more of a producer in the room, coming up with the instrumental parts, but I do a lot of lyrics as well with artists. But yeah, definitely a majority is more of songwriters in the room, and that I'm handling all the music as far as the songwriting process goes.
Yeah, so a little more time in the studio this year again. When you're not in the studio, what's grabbing your interest?
Man, not in the studio. I've been going on lots of walks, just trying to get as much exercise as possible. Definitely the curse of being a studio musician is sitting in a nice, comfy studio chair all day. So I've been just biking a lot, riding my bike, and then going on a lot of walks. That's been my probably escape from the times where I feel like I've been in the studio too long. Even walking up to 10 miles a day has been it's been my most favorite thing to do recently.
Yeah, smart. So let me ask you this, because every time we close out the show, I want to know this, and this is tough. It's always a tough question. I laugh because Davide mentioned our buddy Paul Peterson last week at NAMM. I talked to Paul several times on this program, and he's been a friend, but he changed his, because like many people, once we say, what are the three concerts? If you were booking the show and you were responsible, you're the promoter, what are the three shows that you would want to see, whether those performers are still around or not? I'm really curious. So I want you to think about that for a second. And I'll just tell you this, particularly with musicians, I know that 10 minutes after they leave the studio, they come back and say, I should have said this, right? because that's a tough one. And not to, you have a lot of favorites, you work with a lot of people. I don't mean to, ignore anybody, but if you were to set a concert up today or tomorrow, and you had to book 3 acts for it,
dead or alive,
I'm curious. Yep. I'm curious who Isaac Levy would want.
I would say, right off the top of my head, growing up with a rock and roll drummer for a dad, I was, I'd probably say the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and D'Angelo. It's a little bit far out of left field from the other two, but those were definitely the 3 that really inspired me the most.
And so tell us more about how D'Angelo inspired you.
Yeah, I would say I was probably 13 years old, and I heard the D'Angelo Voodoo album. And there's a saying when you're 13 to 14 years old, the music you're listening to then influences you for basically the rest of your life, even if you're a musician or not. And definitely the way I heard D'Angelo and the pocket and rhythm definitely inspired my playing and everything I've done since then.
Were you a fan of the Led Zeppelin? Did you just hear them, or was Dad a fan, or how did you happen to be a Led Zeppelin guy?
Yeah, Dad was
Was it the guitar playing?
Yeah, the Jimmy Page is definitely my guitar hero. But my dad has been a massive fan. Has everything on vinyl, everything in CDs, and Led Zeppelin 4 was always on when I was a kid in the car, and that really stuck with me.
You know, what's interesting, we discovered in the show when our friend Billy from the Fabulous Armadillos was on, and he knows his bands from way bygone days. And Jimmy Page played up in Mentor, Minnesota at the Maple Lake Pavilion before anybody really knew who they were.
Wow, and that is crazy.
Isn't that? Yeah, before he was with Led Zeppelin, obviously. And just kind of torn. I think they were probably going from Minneapolis to Winnipeg and wanted a gig in between. You know how that goes. And there's Jimmy Page, and my friend Billy was well aware of that, which I never do, which just blows me out of the water. And the Beatles, of course, are pretty influential. When was your Beatle influence? When did that happen?
I mean, the Beatles, for me, that influence starts as early as I can remember. Definitely having Revolver on in the car since I was a little kid. I remember faint memories of being in a car seat and just hearing it. And you know, having the Beatles be a first probably musical experience. My dad definitely did that intentionally. He knew what he was doing, but it really, it just changed everything for me. And that's how I think about music. And especially as a bass player, I would say McCartney's bass playing is probably what like my bass playing revolves around his, I would say.
Have you crossed paths with him in your musical adventures yet?
No, that would be a dream come true.
Would that make you nervous as a musician, or once you start playing, is it like a good athlete? Once the game starts, you kind of forget about who's out there. You just perform.
Well, you know, it's funny. I said my dad is a massive Zeppelin fan, and about 2 years ago, he was playing a festival with Brian Setzer, and then he looks to his left, and 2 black Cadillac Escalades pull up, and Robert Plant walks out. And I asked him about that, and he was like, "Oh man, I've never played more John Bonham fills in my life." He knew exactly what he was doing on that too. But it would be one of those things where I truly think if that happened to me, or if any of Zeppelin or the alive members of the Beatles were there, I think I would be pretty nervous, and I never get stage fright or choke up or anything. But I truly don't know if I would know what to do with myself. Right.
Isaac, so I know you said you're going to be in the studio and doing a lot of work in there this year. Is there anywhere fans can see you anytime soon, watch you?
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing really booked for shows right now, but my website, isaaclevymusic.com, my Instagram, I'm mostly on Instagram. That's kind of my main social media, but I'm always posting about shows or upcoming tours or anything of the sort on my Instagram.
Okay, so I suggest
follow Isaac on social media. Do it.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure I'm following you here as soon as we finish this session. But I really appreciate you coming in. I'm on location today, which is rather unusual, and but hopefully one day it'd be fun to watch you work in the studio, to be quite honest about it. I'm a little bit of a geek that way, but being in the broadcasting business, I think maybe that's part of it. But Isaac, so happy for you and all the success, and I know you're just kind of beginning that whole journey, but congratulations. Davide and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on my first concert, and I'm going to guess we're going to talk again soon someday, I hope.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you both for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Isaac.
Sorry.
Yep. No, gosh, never be sorry to me, Davide. It's great to have Davide here as our producer, Davide Rosso, or a native of Basel, Switzerland, by the way. But like so many guys, he met that good Minnesota girl, and he became a Minnesota resident. And of course, a great music producer here in town. Isaac Levy is one of those talents that come around once in a while that can play it all and do it all. And of course, great musical roots in his family as well, as we talked about his father, Noah. And we'll talk some more here next week on My First Concert. Dave here, I want to thank the folks at starbank.net for bringing this to you, and AquariusHomeservices.com studios for joining us as well today on the broadcast. And we're going to see you next time. Again, I'll encourage you to go to Apple, go to Spotify, go to TalkNorth.com, wherever you want, and get these podcasts. And we're focusing on our Minnesota musicians. And we appreciate you joining us. And Davide, I will see you and talk to you next week. Isaac, thank you.